community. I mean, going back to the relief hurricane, what was it, Hurricane Harvey?
Yeah, $100 million he helped raise.
Exactly. So, I mean, J.J. Watt, one of the true good guys in our game.
Kenny, doesn't it stress you out that he's putting his lower back, he's just arching a little bit too much? Don't you want him just to have a little, just on a regular shoulder press? Don't you want him to? You think he can handle it? Okay, I just thought I would.
Okay.
Not only do I think he can handle it, I might be crazy, but I'm going to guess J.J. Watt knows how to lift weights better than even Jenna Wolfe.
Listen, maybe. I don't want to say for sure. Maybe.
Oh, I will say for sure.
I think his lower back is compromised with the arch. I think it's, I would have.
Well, J.J., once you're done playing in the playoff game and meeting that kid, if you want some workout tips from Jenna Wolfe, she charges $78 an hour, but I hear it's worth it.
Well, we know who he ain't going to go
More
to
than $78 an hour.
Yeah.
For workout tips. He's not
But I'm also not critiquing him.
He's not going to Nick Wright.
If he was sitting there at Chipotle, I'd tell him the perfect order. I'm not critiquing him on something he knows how to do as well as anyone in the world.
All right, let's get back to what you both are better at. Discussing things that are going to be happening in the NFC this weekend, like the Seahawks, who will be taking on the Packers. It is Sunday night, and it is on Fox. Russell Wilson led his team to a league-best 7-1 record on the road, but the Seahawks' all-everything quarterback has never won at Lambeau. You compare that with the fact that the Pack only lost one game there this season, and it's pretty much an uphill battle for Seattle. Nick, who wins this game?
Well, Green Bay did only lose one home game all year, but Seattle also is 8-1 on the road. Very different than they typically are. 4-4 at home they were this year, and 8-1 now on the road. But Green Bay's healthier. Green Bay's more well-rested. Green Bay was the better team this year, not just in record, but by eye test and advanced metrics. And for all those reasons, I like Green Bay in this football game. If people haven't been watching Seattle throughout the year, what I think would surprise you is that defense has been bad. It's not that the defense hasn't been old Legion of Boom, great. Well, it hasn't been that, but it also hasn't even been average. They've been great at forcing turnovers, and that's it. There were only 4 teams in the league this year that had at least 12 games where they allowed 24 or more points. Seattle's one of them. Now, to their credit, the other 3 were combined 7 and 29 in those games. Seattle was 7 and 5. So even when the defense plays poorly, they found a way to win games. But I think Seattle's season comes to a close this weekend. I think they've had a great season. They overachieved by most people's standards. I had them in the playoffs. Most people did not. They won a playoff game on the road. I do not see them, though, going to Lambeau and beating a rested Green Bay team that has a bye for only the 3rd time in Aaron Rodgers' career.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Now, the issues that you pointed out with the Seahawks defense are valid concerns. I do believe that the defense played better once they got Quadri Diggs. I think when he's on the field, they're 5-1 as a team. But I just look at this matchup, and I look at what they're going to have to ask Russell Wilson to do in order to get a win in Lambeau Field. And as great as Russell Wilson played last week, 18 for 30, 325, and a touchdown, no turnovers, and then the 45 yards rushing, a 108 passer rating. As good as that was against the Eagles, he's got to be even better going up against this Packers team because he's going up against a much better offense, and he's not going to have a situation where you got the whole Josh McCown coming in for a Carson Wentz that gets knocked out after the 2nd series. This is going to be a more formidable opponent for the Seattle Seahawks, and I just don't think that they're going to be up for the task because of that defense and knowing that they've been suspect in every single category with the exception of taking the football away. Unless Aaron Rodgers and that Packers offense gives the ball away and gives that Seahawks offense some extra possessions in some short fields, it's going to be tough sledding for Russell Wilson and company.
And you brought up this point earlier. As great as Russell's been this year and throughout his career, Lambeau's been a bit of a house of horrors for him.
Yep.
He's, 0 for 3. He had a 5-interception game there, or 5-turnover game there once. Now, I think Russell will play better. I think Russell will play actually well in this game. I just think Green Bay's been building to this moment. And Rodgers also, the second half of the year, Aaron Rodgers was not good. The team he was averaging, though, around 200 yards passing. The only thing he did in elite level the second half of the year was not turn the ball over. I think he understands the level of importance of this game. They win this game, they either host the NFC Championship game against the Vikings, or they get an opportunity to avenge their worst game of the entire season. I think it was 37-8, lost to San Francisco. But none of that can happen if they don't take care of business this weekend against the Seahawks.
He does. He does understand the gravity of it. He said, I'm much closer to the end of my career than the beginning. I'm 36 years old. I know what I have right in front of me here. I'm just curious how much weather will play a factor this weekend. Whose game benefits more if there is going to be what they're calling for, 8 to 10 inches of snow and wind and all of it come this weekend?
I think it benefits the Packers just because they're used to dealing with the field conditions in inclement weather. That's a true grass field up in Lambeau. What Seattle plays on when it gets cold, that's field turf.
Right.
So, I mean, the field turf, you got a little bit better footing than when you're playing on natural grass, especially if you got some precipitation on the ground. So in terms of understanding, you know, how to make sure that you put yourself in a good position as a defender, not being able to give up big plays on double moves, things of that nature, making sure that you take solid angles on trying to tackle the opposing ball carriers. Like, I think that's all advantage Green Bay.
Packers.
Now, as far as the quarterbacks, I think both of them have the arm talent to be able to play in tough conditions, but it's about the skill position players and the defenders, and I think that's clearly an advantage for the Green Bay Packers.
Well, and what everyone says, and tell me if I got this wrong, Canty, because I've obviously never played a football game in the snow, is that if it's snowy, the guys who know where they're going have the edge over the guys who have to react. So you would talk about if you have receivers that are trying to, especially receivers trying to run down the field, and pass rushers as well, that speaks to the other, to me, important note of this game. When I said earlier the Packers are healthier, it's by a significant margin. Yesterday's practice, Seattle was out their left tackle, Dwayne Brown, their backup left tackle, George Font, and one of their top guards, Mike Iupati. So if you have multiple backup offensive linemen that are having to react to a Green Bay pass rush, especially in bad conditions, that doesn't speak very well for Seattle's chances. Now, Seattle, I'm certain, will try to counter that by saying, well, why do we have to deal with a pass rush? Let's just run the football into the line of scrimmage like we did so ineffectively against Philadelphia. I know Seattle will try to run the football. Since Chris Carson's gone down, they have not been an effective running team. I know it's a small sample size, and I love beast mode, but he appears probably, there's a reason he stepped away from football twice before Seattle brought him back. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively on Green Bay, even though they'll try to. If Seattle's going to pull off the upset, it's going to be the same script they've had all year. Keep it close, have it be one score or, 7 points or less late, and then trust Russell Wilson to go make some magic down the field.
And the only problem with Russell Wilson making some magic is that this Green Bay Packers defensive front has allowed the 5th fewest scramble yards in the NFL for opposing quarterbacks. So it's going to be tough for Russell Wilson to extend plays, especially going up against Preston and Zadarius Smith.
Well, when you talk about what's on the line for both of these teams, at least with the Packers and for Aaron Rodgers, it's his legacy. Here's Aaron Rodgers on his quest for a 2nd Super Bowl title.
It's on my mind every day. I mean, that's why we play the game. That's why you put in the time in the offseason. That's why you do the little things. It's to put yourself in this position where we're 2 games away from being able to compete for that. So, I mean, I'm 36. I know what this is all about. This is an important opportunity for us. I feel like I got a lot of really good years left, but you never know. A lot of things happen year to year. You know, we've had some great teams that, have been an injury away or, play away from being special. So I want to make the most of this opportunity.
So, Nick, what would a 2nd Lombardi trophy do for Rodgers' legacy?
Well, it's the only thing missing. And people might say, well, that's an unfair standard. Now we're talking about not just one Super Bowl, but multiple Super Bowls. But for the greatest quarterbacks of all time, yeah, we are. We're talking about multiple Super Bowls. Like, when you're talking about the best quarterbacks of the last 50 years, post-merger, 1970 to now, Brady's by himself. Brady, there's nobody on Brady's level. There's nobody on Brady's tier. Brady has the regular season success, the overwhelming playoff success, 6 championships. Nobody is close to him, and I don't believe anyone will ever be. I don't think anyone ever, unless they fundamentally change the way you're allowed to build football teams, remove the salary cap or something, you're never going to see that type of success. But then there is a 2nd tier of all-time greatness that Rodgers is not quite to. That's the one with Joe Montana, with Peyton Manning. I would argue John Elway with his 5 Super Bowl appearances and 2 championships. And then there's that 3rd tier, and we can argue about who should be on it. Some people would say I should have included Staubach or Bradshaw. Some people would say Russell Wilson has made, or Big Ben have made cases to be there. But those 4 guys no one would argue with. Rodgers, Brees, Favre, and Dan Marino. If Aaron wins a Super Bowl, he moves up a tier. He's in the discussion for, is he the greatest quarterback ever, not named Tom Brady? Because that's the only thing that's missing is the multiple Super Bowls. And he has had some postseason devastation.
Yes.
He's lost 7 career playoff games. 3 they got handily beaten, one of them by your team when they were 15-1. But those other 4 losses all came in walk-off fashion. Final play of the game. 3 overtime losses, including an overtime loss in the NFC Championship game when they had a 12-point lead that deprived them of the chance to have Brady, Rodgers in a Super Bowl. Back, by the way, when Brady only had 3. That was the Super Bowl that ended up being Brady versus Russell Wilson, the Marshawn Lynch game, Malcolm Butler. And all of NFL history could be different. They win that game. If Rodgers wins, Brady still has 3. Rodgers has 2. But none of that happened. A Super Bowl championship this year, Canty, to me, you start having a real Rodgers versus Manning conversation. That's really fascinating. Rodgers continues to enhance his legacy as a guy whose play doesn't drop at all when the postseason begins, and he clearly separates himself from Brett Favre as the greatest quarterback in Packers history.
Yeah, if he wins a Super Bowl this year, you put him on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks because it's arguable that he's the most talented quarterback that the game has ever seen. I mean, if you were going into a lab to build a quarterback, I mean, Aaron Rodgers has everything that you can look for from a physical tools perspective. He can scramble. He's got the arm talent. He can throw off platform, on the run, stationary in the pocket. There's really nothing he can't do in terms of having the physical ability. But what it comes down to is being in a position to compete at a high level. I remember in 2013, I was a free agent and went on a visit to the Green Bay Packers. And as soon as I got picked up from the airport, they said, if Aaron Rodgers only has 1 Super Bowl appearance for our franchise, it is franchise malpractice. It is criminal. Now, no surprise they didn't sign me as a free agent because Ted Thompson wasn't signing anybody as a free agent.
But that was 7 years ago.
But that was 7 years ago, and they got a new GM, and he actually was aggressive this past year and going out and getting Preston and Zadarius Smith to add to the defensive side of the ball because he knew that they can't ask Aaron Rodgers to win a 35-31 shootout every single time, but especially this time of year. But I'm right there with Nick Wright. I think this puts Aaron Rodgers at another level if he's able to get